First and foremost, thank you to everyone for making it to this. Really appreciate your time. I know it's a really busy time for everyone right now. A couple of things just at the start. Please, if you ever have any questions, as we're going along or anything like that, then please feel free to enter those questions into the chat. I'll make sure that I check the chat at the very end when we get into the Q&A session and make sure that I answer all questions. One thing that I do need to apologize on behalf of Nicole and myself for. Nicole actually had an emergency, a medical emergency today, so she is actually not going to be able to make this. So you're stuck with me, but I promise you that I am actually going to do a fairly well-balanced job of presenting some of the information that she and I talked about in a way that even if you don't use FitGrid, you'll still be able to take and use and do as you will with. So I apologize on behalf of herself and us. We're really looking forward to that sort of 1-2 punch, but hopefully this will still be informative and interesting for everyone. My name is NT Etuk. For those of you who don't know me, I started FitGrid. FitGrid is really a community management system that allows you to connect all of your staff, owners, managers, instructors, and clients in one network and start to get a whole bunch of interesting information, feedback, and all the rest of that. The reason that we're talking about retaining staff to increase client retention is that many of you know, I believe you know this and feel this in your business, that fitness is a people business, right? At the end of the day, it's about the motivation, it's about the experience that you have when you walk into a place, right? And we like to say that if you are connected, the more connected you are as a client inside your studio, whether it is to the other clients, whether it is to the instructors, whether it is to the front desk person, or even the owner or manager, the more likely that place is to feel like home. And the staff, and by staff we actually mean your entire team, is a key part of that. So we're going to walk you through some concepts today. Some of them I think will be very new, like a different twist on things that you've seen before, but then also get into the specifics that you can do in order to help to retain those clients, retain the staff, and increase client retention. What we're going to use as examples of the type of information and data that you could pull or that you should have in looking at all of this, we're going to use FitGrid as a system, but I'll also talk about how you can get that information, on your own. So if there are any questions around, hey, how do I do this on my own? It's more than likely that you can find a lot of this data and a lot of this information on your own. It just might take a little bit more time to pull it from, whether it's from mind, body, or whatever else it happens to be. So why don't we go ahead and get started. Hiring, training, and motivating your team are critical building blocks to increasing revenue and attendance. Just in terms of my background, so that everyone knows why it is that you're listening to me. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I like to say that I've had the entrepreneurial bug since the very beginning. 11 years old, I taught myself 6 programming languages. I was building video games back in Nigeria when I was growing up there. And those video games, I wanted to start the next Apple computer. I'm still working on that. But in any case, I came to the United States and started my first company, which did educational video games, ended up raising $25 million for it, ran it for a number of years, exited that. It was an education company, and then came into the health and fitness space. And my first experiences in that were actually as a client and then as a studio owner and manager. And that's where the idea of how important it was to connect your staff, connect your instructors, and connect your clients became really, really obvious to me. So I walked in, I had plantar fasciitis, which is that pain between the front and back of the feet. And they told me that I should go, the PT said I should go to group fitness. So they said yoga and they said Pilates. I said, great, I'll go to Pilates. I followed my instructor. She said, come to a group fitness class, mat class. I was like, great, I'll go and check that out. And I walked into my first mat class, my first group fitness class, and looked around and I was like, wow, this is a community. It's a community. And I realized over time that the more connected I was to that community, the more I was going to come back. And it started with when I walked in the front door. Was the person behind the front desk pleasant? Did they have energy? If they did, boom, that set my day off to a fantastic start, right? If I walked into the instructor and the instructor had energy, that's where the emotional bond is, right? So if they were high energy, I walked in feeling terrible. I walked off feeling like I could run through a wall. Boom, amazing, right? If the clients around me were incredible people or full of energy or full of fun or just sweating with me, then I was more likely to come back. Now, all of that gets motivated by your staff, gets motivated by your team. So it's critically important the people you put in the positions in order to be able to achieve this. So let's keep going. Here's what we'll cover. First, why is this topic important? The idea around hiring quality instructors. And then we'll expand the notion of team to include staff and instructors. How do you keep them motivated and engaged? We're going to talk about analyzing instructor performance, leveraging them to boost client retention. There's a whole new topic in here that we're pretty excited to talk about, understanding instructor risk, right? One of the interesting things that when I first came into this industry and started my own little pop-up studios, I tried to understand what it was like to be a manager and an owner, is at one point in time, one of my instructors was contributing 50% of my revenue. And he knew it. It was one of those things where I was like, this is what I think you should do, blah, blah, blah. And he would just sit there and look at me like, uh-huh. And so I noticed and I lived with, until we could change that dynamic, how difficult it is, because your instructors are like, well, you wouldn't have a business without me, right? And you're sitting there saying, well, you wouldn't have clients if we didn't go out and market this, right? And so that is an interesting balance, that we strike between studio owners and instructors. Leveraging your staff to boost client retention. I'll talk about some of the ways that can be done, and then evaluating that performance, and finally wrap this all up. So that's what we're going to cover. And once again, if you have any questions at any point in time, throw them in the chat slot. And then at the very end, if anyone's interested, there is an amazing offer that I'm going to give you that I think you'll be interested in along the way. All right, so let's start by taking a full step back. Let's talk about our customer journey. And let's talk about it in two ways. Let's talk about it from a traditional perspective, and let's talk about it from a people perspective, right? And all of this will tie into the idea of why it's important and how it's important for you to leverage your team, your staff, your instructors, et cetera, in order to keep client retention up. So traditionally speaking, if I'm a client, I go and I sign up for a class, in a studio. And I generally get an awareness of that from maybe a Yelp review or a Groupon coupon that came by, might be something like ClassFest, might be word of mouth, a friend, whatever it happens to be. And I go in, to my first class, and many of you, those of you who know me, know that I'm single. So that first class, that's like your first date, right? It's a trial. I'm testing it. If I come back for a second date, then okay, I kind of liked you. That's my confirmation phase, right? If we get to the third date, okay, we might actually last for a few months, or we might get married. Who knows, right? But that's the way that I sort of think about it. There's your trial, your confirmation, then your solidification sort of aspects. Now, typically, what happens in the industry is there's a 50% drop-off rate after the first class. It's a massive drop-off rate, right? We don't want to lose one out of every two clients. So the typical view of a customer journey leads us to believe, though, that we have time to make an impression, on these people. But that's actually wrong. If you look at it from a people perspective, here's what happens. The awareness stage, let's say that's your friend's review or someone who you don't know, but you sort of heard about this place, you decide that you're going to go in and decide you're going to give it a shot. By the time you walk into that first meeting, that first time into the studio, you're having 3 people interactions. Your first people interaction is with the staff. And as I said before, if that staff person is having a bad day, is low energy, isn't greeting me or whatever, you know what? I might just walk right out the door right there. If that instructor was out drinking the night before, whatever it happens to be, and they're like, and they're just not there, they're not on it, the energy isn't there, I'm not coming back. And if I happen, to be next to, Joe Schmo or whatever, who's just not cool, not interesting or whatever, I'm just like, okay, well, that's an indication of the people who are in there. I'm not coming back. 3 people interactions. all of which you actually have the ability to control. And you have the ability to influence how well those people interactions go. So by the time you actually get to that solidification stage, you think that you've had 4 different interactions by the end of the 3rd class, you've actually had 10. And you'd better be really good at making sure that your staff, your team members, your instructors, even your clients are good at those interactions. You do that, you will boost your retention. Okay, let me talk about the client bell curve a little bit. Now, many of you know the bell curve. It's just sort of a general curve or whatever. And what we like to say is that if you look at like the bottom 20% of your audience, right, the people that come to your studio, that bottom 20%, they're most likely not yours. They're churning. They're going to leave. Other people are going to come. You know, they'll leave. Other people will come, right? The top 20%, those people are yours. You know, we talk about the Pareto principle, 80-20. The top 20%, they are your people. There's probably little you can do to dislodge them, you know, and what you're probably doing actually, if you're sending out things like automated emails or whatever that have like price discounts, you're actually probably training your top 20% to be price mercenaries, in all truth, right? Because they were probably going to sign up again anyway because they love you. And all you're doing is reminding them, yes, that their package is up or whatever it happens to be. But if you're putting a price discount in there, then you're training them to want, you know, a discount on prices. This middle 60% though, that's where your business will continue to grow, right? These are people who like you. These are people who have been in there, they've come, but they've probably been to other places as well. And what we like to say is that these folks need nurturing. They need you to nurture them. What I like to say, the example that I always give is if I'm a client and you want to upsell me on a membership, you want to upsell me on a package, let's say I'm in my intro offer or something like that, the worst thing you can do to me is just hit me up and be like, yo, do you want to pay more money? I'll be like, yo, I don't even know you. Right? So unless it was something I really, really wanted to do and I was convinced in doing, you don't go straight there. You want to build a relationship with these people. And that's where your teams, your staff, your instructors, that's where they become critically important. So you want to build relationships over time. The other analogy that I use, and I don't know how everyone else out there is at building relationships, but I'm the kind of guy where I might not speak with you for 6 months or for a year, right? And the conversation always continues, you know, and it's like it never stopped. But sometimes people will say to me, oh, it's so good to hear from you. You know, how can I help you? You know, and I'm like, you know, if I just sent that message 3 months ago, because I was thinking about it, just send a text message, you know, hey, just thinking about you, just wanted to check in. Didn't need anything from them then. But now at this point in time, when I do need something, it doesn't seem like all I'm doing is coming and asking them for something. You want to think about your clients like that. You want to develop relationships when you actually really want to ask something, and it's going to be important that you tell and that you train your instructors and your staff to be able to do that. Okay, but let's start first with the hiring process. And this was the part that Nicole was really going to do. And I'm sorry, recommendations is actually with 1 C, not 2 C's, but it's all good. So hiring is the first step to retaining good staff. A lot of people, 99% of studio owners don't formalize this process. They don't formalize it successfully. They don't do it as well as they can. They don't apply a good job description with the necessary skills, the expectations, the perks, the compensation, and even how to apply to the role. There are certainly tips that can be given on finding these descriptions and these roles. How you interview is critical. Personally, I have a question that I always ask people that people are sort of surprised by, but I'll always ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And to take the edge off of it, I say, listen, my mother is 70 years old and, you know, and she just retired, and I ask her, what does she want to be when she grows up? So it's interesting to listen and hear what people have to say when you give them sort of broad range or free range to sort of go everywhere, right? Or anywhere. Do they speak concisely? Do they actually have an idea of what it is that they're interested in? How do they think about like a 3-year, 5-year, et cetera plan? One of the bigger things that I like to look for is whether or not someone is going to be an evangelist or they're going to be a mercenary when you're doing this interview process. If you come in to my company, right, and I get the sense that you are what I call a mercenary, you are all about how much you're getting paid, you are not getting the job. Because that means that if there's ever a hiccup with the business or anything like that, then that means that you're gone, you're out the door. I want an evangelist, I want a missionary, I want someone who believes in what we're doing, because if there are challenges or hiccups, they will be there and they will be with you through and through. So you want to make sure that you're weeding out these evangelists versus missionaries. Evangelists versus mercenaries. And the other thing you want to do is you want to ask a whole set of questions, around their perspective on ask them what they believe their job and their responsibility is. Anyone that stops with the idea of, I should come in and I should teach a good class, right? No. That is where you start. That's like the minimum that person should be able to do. Really what they should be doing and what you should be looking for is understanding whether or not they feel like they are part of a team, whether or not they feel like they want to get behind the mission, whether they want to support something, whether or not they're there for the clients. Like the clients notice, they sense this sort of thing, right? Like if the instructor on their own would just sit there after class answering questions until you kick them out because the next class has to come in, that's the instructor you want. That's the teacher you want. If the instructor seems all about, nope, get in, get out, give me my paycheck and move on to the next thing, that's a bad thing. And over time, what will happen is you will find that people like that will be toxic for the rest of your organization. And you should not be afraid of letting toxic people go, but even better, don't let them in the first place. Okay, finally, training them well, handbook, tools and materials, partner platform trainings, mind-body training, all of that sort of stuff. These are all key. And so if anyone wants to have a conversation with us, with Nicole, afterwards about best hiring practices and all of that, we are happy to have that conversation. What we've seen across hundreds of studios that we've worked with, what Nicole has seen across her hundreds of clients that she's worked with, etc. We're happy to go much, much deeper into that. But just understand it starts with the hiring of quality instructors. Oh, and by the way, let me say one last thing. The opposite part or the opposite side of hiring is being able to fire, right? Hire, fire. If there is someone who is toxic in your organization, if there's someone who isn't getting it in your organization, if there is someone who is just not there for the clients or has a different perspective on what their role is supposed to be versus what you understand their role is supposed to be, do both of yourselves a favor and let them go quickly. Because what will happen is they will start complaining to the other people in the organization. And that just becomes a toxic brew. You will never see eye to eye with this person. Get rid of them quickly. I know that's a difficult conversation to have, but it's something that we really, really, really recommend. The other pieces that we'll go into a little later on is how you can have these conversations that are objective conversations with your instructors, objective conversations with your staff, that's not based on what we tend to do today, which is I walk into a class, I evaluate it, I give you my generally subjective feeling, about how that is, where the instructor or the teacher can actually disagree with you, but they just feel then that you just have power over them. No. Let's actually base it on actual feedback, qualitative feedback from clients, and numbers. Numbers don't lie, feedback doesn't lie. All right. How do you keep the teams motivated and engaged? All of your staff and your instructors might be different, but we find that instructors are motivated by pay, obviously. Following, so increasing their following, whether it's online and in class. They actually took the job in the first place because they wanted to help people, right? So making a difference. And it's actually amazing how much ego motivates people, right? Getting praise from you, so making a difference and getting recognition from the studio, or getting praise or recognition from the clients is a huge motivator for your instructors and for your teachers as they go in, to the class. When there's a team in place and you're starting to talk about the retention aspects, then you want to be able to walk into these conversations, again, as I mentioned before, being objective about it. I think that there are some people out there, some studios out there that have instructor compensation that's based on the number of clients that you have in class, and some of you have like flat rates, for example. Well, if you're talking about increased numbers of people in class as a part of your pay, then the instructor can easily be convinced to do everything that they can to get their numbers up in class. If you're talking about something flat, then you're probably appealing more to their psychology, more to the fact they're making a difference for their clients, that you're recognizing who they are and that you actually see that. And then they want to know that they actually get something for it, right? So doing quarterly or annual reviews, very important. Even monthly checkpoints or check-ins, their staff development opportunities. I mean, people want to feel like they're about growth. So workshops, community events, continuing education, and also the ability to feel as if they're moving up in the business. I'm a partial owner in a set of studios, and it's remarkable how stuck instructors and trainers and teachers can actually feel. And they have the conversation with you and they're like, hey, I'd like to be doing more. I'd like to be doing more. And we don't think about the ways in which we can do more with them. Sometimes motivation and keeping people motivated and engaged is all about growth. They want to go out and they want to try, doing something on social media. They want to try a special class. They want to try, learning or getting a different credential or something like that. Encourage that and let them. Google did this really well. As they were building, obviously, what's a massive business, they allowed their employees to take 10% of their time and just work on whatever in the early days, right? They don't do that right now. But it led to a lot of innovations because they gave people that freedom and people felt like this is something that I can jump in on. And then rewards and incentives. So how do you talk about bonuses or create structure around these incentives? I'll talk to some of that a little bit as well. Nicole and I have discussed different ways that you can do programs around that. Evaluating instructor performance. So let's jump in for a second. Let's talk about evaluating instructor performance. So there are a few metrics, and I'm going to show you how we can calculate some of these things. So there is a quantitative aspect. Let's calculate the break-even. How many of you actually know what the break-even number of clients that you need inside your class so that you start making money on your class, right? Then, of course, the average class size. You can compare the average class size to the break-even and see whether or not your instructors are performing. That is one way of creating a bonus, right? If we know that the break-even is supposed to be 15 and your average class size is actually 18 or 19, I have space to actually give you, a bonus. Studio return rate. One of the most important criteria is how well do your instructors serve as an introduction to your studio, right? So if a client comes for the first time to this particular instructor, then what percentage of those clients end up coming back to anyone in the studio? Because that means they had a good time with that first instructor. It almost doesn't matter whether they come back to the same instructor as long as they come back to the studio. Profitability is obviously a big thing. And then finally, what we call value to cost ratio. And this is something that we focus on a lot, especially when you create new classes and you try to figure out who you should put into those new classes. We'll talk about the value to cost ratio. And then finally, the feedback. Okay, so let me actually show you what some of this looks like. Okay, so if you go to fitgrid.com and you actually go to resources and click on the profit calculator, the first thing that we're going to walk you through is the ability for you to understand what your break-even is. This is a free tool. Anyone can go to the website and anyone can use this. So hopefully you'll take advantage of it. But what we'll do is we'll start here and we'll say, okay, what is our profit goal on a monthly basis? So let's say that our profit goal was $10,000, right? And then how much average monthly revenue do we bring in as a studio? Let's say that was $50,000. Then that means that really our profit goal that we're trying to go after is 10,000 divided by 50,000, which is a 20% profit goal, right? Now let's say that we had, let's say we went to our QuickBooks and we said, okay, what is our monthly studio expense, right? Let's say that our monthly studio expense was, I don't know, $30,000. $30,000. And then we wanted to find out how many average classes do we have per day. We added up all our classes across the week, divided by 7, and we came up with the number 10. So we said we have 10 average classes. It's a lot of classes. Let's say it was 10 classes per day, right? Then the cost to produce one class would actually be $30,000 per month for your monthly studio expense, right? And we're excluding instructor pay in that, right? Divide that by 30 days. That means that's $1,000 per day. And we have 10 classes per day. So each class costs $100 to produce, not including the instructor pay rate. Now let's go and let's assume that you pay that instructor $100, right? And if you use FitGrid or whatever, you will automatically see what these numbers can turn out to be. Let's say it was $100, then that means the $100 to produce the class, including your overhead expenses, et cetera, plus the $100 on the instructor pay rate, comes out to $200 that it costs to actually produce that class, right? And if you use FitGrid, as I was saying, this is where you can automatically figure out how much average revenue you get per visit to a particular instructor. And that will be taking into account the percentage that they use of ClassPass, the percentage of clients that come in ClassPass, or annual memberships, or monthly memberships, or packages, or single class drop-ins, or what have you. Take all that into account for this particular instructor per visit. In general, let's say that that was $20. We're going to make that up. Well, that means that you need 10 people per class to break even. $200 to produce the class. $100 is basically all the overhead expenses taken into account. Another $100 for the instructor pay. That gets us to $200 to produce the class. I'm getting $20 for each client that comes into the class. And that means I need 10 people in order to break even for this particular instructor. Now, if I actually wanted to get to my 20% profit, though, what I actually need is 12.5 people per class, right? So, and you can move this up and down if you want, from 20% to, different profit goal of 28%. Then you would need $12,800 would be your profit goal. You'd need 16 people per class, right? So please feel free to use this tool. It will help you to understand very quickly and very easily how many people you need inside the class or inside a particular instructor's class in order for them to start to break even. When you get above break even, then you have the ability now to go and see, well, how much are these people actually, how many average people are they bringing to class? So I'm going to go to FitGrid, for example, and I'm going to look at instructor reports, right? And under these instructor reports, it's a studio that we have permission to show, for example. And let's say that I go into Hillary. This is her report for September. Now, in this report, we'll come back through this, but we can actually see the amount of money or revenue that she brought in, how much we actually paid her, et cetera, and therefore the profits. What I'm looking at over here is what are her average visits per class? 15. Automatically calculated for you, like right there. You can pull this number from MindBody very, very easily, right? So use the profit calculator, check this out for that particular month. Hey, Hillary, you did really great. You had above the 12.6 or whatever the number was, and therefore you get a bonus. You guys choose what the bonus is or as an incentive. So that is one way of helping you to leverage your instructors to increase, motivate your instructors and increase retention and get them really in there and incentivized to do what you want them to do. I'm just going to take a quick break. I've been talking a lot, to everyone. If anyone wants to take the chance to drop some questions in the chat section, then please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'm going to keep rolling. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. All right. The other thing that we had talked about was we had said, all right, studio return rate. So here's the studio return rate on the report. What does studio return rate mean? Studio return rate is the percentage of clients that came to the studio for the first time to this instructor, in this case, Hillary, right? And then what percentage of those people came back to any instructor? So for the month of September, 39% of the people who came to Hillary first came back to the studio within the next 30 days. Now you can actually benchmark that. One of the things that we provide is the ability for you to look at KPIs, instructor KPIs across multiple instructors. So if these were multiple instructors, these are different instructors, here's their instructor retention rate, here's the studio return rate, their average utilization, total visits, all the way over to profit per class, et cetera. You could actually say, all right, well, let's sort this by the studio return rate, right? And let's see who actually has the highest. Now, one of the things that we recommend that you do, if you ever pull this sort of data, is that you don't just look at just like one number, but you actually might look across a couple of different numbers, right? So studio return rate, it might look like Penny's doing really well. She has 100% of people coming back. But if you actually look at the total classes that she had in the month, it was actually only 6 classes, right? So you probably want more like Alexandra, who had a 75% studio return rate, but had a more normal 15 classes that was being done. So you can sort of look at these different things and attempt to figure out what it is that how you want to incentivize and who you actually want to rank for. Profitability, we talked about the profitability aspect, and then the value to cost ratio. So profitability is a very basic one. It's very simple. The way that we actually calculate it, you can calculate it a number of different ways, but in this particular case, you use the FitGrid calculator over here, right? But one of the things that we do automatically inside the reports is not including your overhead. You can actually look at the profits. So we actually look at the percentage, so the pricing options. So for Hillary, 42% of her clients are ClassPass, 33% are this Transform membership, 6% are Soho House members, etc. And we associate prices, your pricing that you have on your website page, with each one of those categories. So we add that all up, and that's how we actually will get to, you know, her revenue number, right? And you can take that and you can look at that, and then you take the amount that she pays, and that gets you your profitability number. Again, you can do this calculation on your own. That information can actually be provided to you through MindBody. But what isn't is what we call the value to cost ratio. And the value to cost ratio is, I think, a pretty interesting metric. What we are interested in understanding is if you were going to create a new class, as an example, and you actually want to put the best instructor in that slot who is cost effective for you, but also will keep your retention really, really high. A lot of the times we're like, oh, well, maybe we should put our best instructor, or maybe we should put our least expensive instructor, what have you. There's actually a smarter way to do that. And we call it the value to cost ratio. Now, value really means revenue, right? So revenue to the amount that you're paying the person, that's the value to cost ratio. So let's say that we had an instructor that gets $100, right? She makes a total of $100 for the classes that she teaches, and you pay her a total of $50. Her revenue to cost, or value to cost ratio, is 2 to 1. That means you get $2 for every $1 that you pay her. Now, there might be another instructor that you're only paying $30, or you're only getting $30 in revenue from them, but you are paying them $3. So that 30 divided by 3, you get a 10 to 1 ratio. So you're getting $10 for every $1 that you're paying this instructor. Now, assuming that their retention, studio return rates, and all the rest of that are approximately the same, you should put that second person in that time slot all day. You will make more money from them, and you'll be paying out less because they're going to keep people in as much as they possibly can, which is going to be roughly the same as the other person that you were comparing, but they cost you so much less. So I want to offer that to you as one of those metrics that you can use. We call it value to cost ratio. You can call it revenue to cost ratio. But if you start doing that ratio and you start saying, how do I think about placing these instructors in different slots so I increase profits, but I also keep my retention high? That's one of the things that you would want to look at. Okay, go back. All right, finally, client feedback. So we talked about some of the quantitative measures here. And again, those are things that if any of you have any questions about how you can pull that, whether it's through MindBody or whether it's using FitGrid, please feel free to ping us, and we're happy to have a conversation with you about that. But qualitative feedback. We should have done a poll at the very beginning so that we have an understanding of how many people actually get client feedback from your about your instructors. This is critical. Oh, sorry, full screen. I'm being reminded to put this full screen, sorry. This is critical. So one of the things that we do with FitGrid is we actually will send out a client survey. That client survey will look like this. So this might be an example. Please help Brooke to improve class and get some important feedback. It's basically at Legree West. We're always working on providing you with the best experience. I would love to hear from you. These get 55% open rates, 30% of people actually clicking back and giving feedback. So how would you rate Brooke as an instructor? 1, not very good, 10, outstanding. Say I click the 10, right? They can then submit any comments for Brooke that would be helpful. So we're getting 30% of people actually doing that. This is massive, for you. We talk about motivating your instructors. We talk about using them or leveraging them to increase retention. This is massive. When you go to this report over here, and you could get this from SurveyMonkey. You could do a number of different things to get this. Venga used to have them, but I think Venga actually, I'm not sure Venga is doing their fitness component anymore. But Frederick has surveys. Those other surveys tend to be more broad-based, like they tend to include, other things like how's your studio, et cetera. This is very, very specifically focused on the instructor. So if you can ask a question that's focused on the instructor, that will be helpful to you for those reviews. But if you come into the client feedback section here as an example, then you can see, oh, she got a 10 out of 10. You can click into this. She's very motivating and pushes everyone to aim higher. You can see what type of client this was, how many times they visited the studio, how many times they've gone to the instructor. And you should be able to, whichever system you use, be able to sort by the different instructors. And you should be able to filter by time frames, because you might want to have this monthly review or quarterly review, get the average of the ratings over the course of time. And even be able to filter out by ClassPass because they don't stick around versus all pricing options, or even first time versus regular. A whole bunch of things that could be in there. The ability to understand that is great. What this does in combination with the instructor reports that we showed you is it gives you a qualitative understanding as well as a quantitative understanding that you can now use to sit down and have a conversation with your instructors, and it's no longer subjective. Here is the feedback on clients from you. Here is you by the numbers. Okay, now let's talk about pay. Let's talk about how you're actually doing. Let's talk about your evolution. One thing that we find really interesting about this particular system that we haven't seen in any other system out there is that inside the instructor app, many of you know that we have an instructor app. There's an app that you can use with FitGrid. The instructors get it. They can see who's coming into class. They can send follow-up messages. Those follow-up messages, because it comes from the instructor, gets a really high open rate, 70 to 80%, and has increased, and I'll show you some of this, but has increased retention of clients by 20% to 60%. We'll show you, some of that. But one of the things that we put inside the app, you get to choose as a studio which of your instructors, number one, you ask the questions about, right? Because there are some instructors that you want feedback on and others that you don't, some that are sensitive souls, as I like to say, right? So you can enable feedback on a per instructor basis, but you can also choose whether that instructor gets the written portion of that feedback inside their client app. In other words, every couple of days they'll get a notification. Hey, you have 3 new reviews inside your app, and they can go and actually read those reviews. They don't get the numbers, so they don't get whether or not they were ranked 5 out of 10 or 7 out of 10. They're not trying to make people cry in case they got a bad one. But they do get the written reviews, again, if you so choose. And this is one of those things that has been phenomenal in helping instructors to regulate themselves, right? So they get the feedback. They had no idea. There was an instructor at one of the places that we were working with. She didn't realize that she actually skipped a count. She would go 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Drove the clients bonkers. Drove them bonkers. When she finally realized the feedback, she was getting 8s. She switched that and started getting 9s and 10s. Something that simple, just because they didn't realize it, they didn't know it, but now they're getting the feedback, right? And we know that there are some instructors out there who just are sensitive, or you have them on plans, you're encouraging them, they're new, you might not want to do that. That's why you get all of this, all of the ability to sort of do this on their own. All right, so let me show you what that actually looks like. Again, you can do this. There are other organizations such as BrandBot. There are organizations such as that allow you to do some of this stuff via text. It's a little different. Frederick will allow you to do some of this stuff where you can send out messages. But there is one thing that we want to make sure that we understand. Be very careful how you use automated emails as a proxy for your staff and for your team and for your instructors, right? You built your business on personal relationships, right? When you had 10 clients, the reason people bought memberships is because you knew their families. You had a conversation with them and they were like, okay, I should upgrade. You got to 100, it's a little harder to do that, but your front desk person knew the people. Like, hey, welcome back, William, great to see you. You get to 300, 400, you get to more of those types of relationships, it becomes harder and harder. You start sending out automated emails because you believe that it is going to help your company, help you manage that. To some extent, that's true. But remember what I said about what's necessary for these clients. Let me go back. In the middle of this bell curve, you will never develop a relationship, a long-term relationship with the clients in that middle 60% with automated emails. So make sure that somewhere in your mix is an easy way for your staff and for your instructors to create that one-to-one connection, that connection where the emotional bond happens, where they're giving the high fives when they walk in, et cetera. All right, I will run quickly through how this is done on the instructor side using the app that FitGrid has created, but you can do the similar sort of thing by having your instructors do this on their own, by you doing it using something like one of the texting solutions or by one of the email solutions that are out there. Just make it authentic, right? So this is what FitGrid Pro looks like. It's the instructor app that you can choose to have your clients use, your instructors use or not. I'm not going to go through all of the components of it because it's not meant to be that kind of party. But this was Alexa, and Alexa has a 33% client retention rate. So she's immediately getting that information, which is important. 33% of her clients have visited her 2 times or more over the last 30 days. That's something that she should know, right? Is she good at doing this or is she not? The main thing that I want to focus on here is actually the follow-up section, right? And that's where you can start to build this two-way communication between someone who represents the studio and the clients really well and really easily, right? So in the follow-ups, click on the follow-up section. You've told us, when you set up the system, that you want your instructors to follow up on first visit, 5th visit, 10th visit clients, whatever it happens to be. Well, here are your 5 first visit clients. The instructor clicks on that, and they're all listed there automatically. Now, when they came in, they had to set up a message that sounded a lot like the default message that was initially there. Hey, it was great seeing you. Hope to see you again. I, as NT, might be like, yo, it's great seeing you. Hope to see you again. Peace, NT. I can then click on create a message. There's my default message. Change the subject line. Change the message if I want you guys to grade on the booty bands today, whatever it happens to be. Add my social media handle, click send. Right? The social media handle will stay there. That's assuming that you allow them to do that, and that's part of your policy. So literally, we've done the measurements. 1 minute and 50 seconds is all that instructors spend in terms of time doing that sort of thing if they just send out the automated messages. But it has an increase. Let's go back here. It has an increase when you want to measure results of this, right? So we look at first-time clients, right? And we say, okay, of the first-time clients to the studio in August for this particular studio, those that receive follow-ups, 269 received them, 47% came back within 30 days. 76 did not receive follow-ups. Only 6% came back, a 40% difference. The month before in July, 215 received follow-ups, 50% came back. 132 did not receive follow-ups, 9% came back. If you look at the average over the past 6 months, 33% increase in first-time clients coming back as a result of messages, personalized messages that are going out from the instructors. At least they think it's personalized, but it takes the instructors like 2 minutes in order to get this out and get this done. That is money for you. And that is leveraging your team, your instructors, which are 60 to 90% of your workforce. That is leveraging them to help you increase return rates. Now, you may or may not see a huge retention shift in your overall studio. That really depends on what percentage of your population are the categories that you're having come back, right? So if you say, I want my instructors to follow up with my first-time clients, and your first-time clients are only 5% of your studio, then you're not going to see a huge shift. But you will certainly see the difference in the ones that, that actually receive the messages here, right? So that is something that, whether you use FitGrid or not, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. I am just saying that there are two keys that you should take away from that. First key, personalization is massive, to the extent that you can have a personalized communication that comes from the place where they created the emotional bond, which is the instructor, over to the client. That will be massive for you. And then be able to measure your open rates, right? And your response rates. So we get 70 to 80% open rates. You should be able to measure that. Is this actually working? And then finally, measure how effective it is in terms of your clients coming back. Very, very, very important. The general concept is critically important as well. So that, again, I'd said that I would use FitGrid as an example. That's one of those examples. Let me keep going. I've got very little time, so I'm going to keep rolling. I'm going to talk about staff now, how you can use your staff to make this, to increase retention. All right, let's keep going. Oh, there's one thing that, one more thing, and this is what I want to offer free for you guys that are out there that want to do this. Understanding instructor risk, right? This is something that's really interesting. One of the things that that when I came into the industry, I realized was that there's this weird balance between like the studio owner and the instructor. The instructor is basically saying, you wouldn't have a business without me. You should pay me more. And the studio owner is saying, well, you wouldn't have clients without me, and it's my business, right? So one of the things that we were very interested in is what's the risk? Like, what's the real risk to your business of an instructor leaving? We talk a lot about, well, instructors might steal our clients or what have you. So this is an example. We took one of our studios, and here is the blue represent the instructor. The size of the ball is the number of clients the instructor sees. The orange dots are the number of clients that see multiple instructors, right? The gray dots are those that just see one type of instructor. Let's look at the numbers. For this particular studio, in this month, this is June of this year, they had a total of 1,266 unique clients go through their doors. 514 of those clients, or 40.6%, saw multiple, so they had shared instructors. You know what I call those guys? Safe, right? If one of your instructors leaves, they're used to seeing another instructor, so 40.6% of your client base is safe. But let's look at Veronica. Veronica has 185 unique clients who only came to Veronica. That's 14.6% of the total. Troy had 10.5%, 133 unique clients. So that means that 25% of your base is tied up with these two instructors. Guess who you want to make sure you treat well, right? But also, guess who you want to make sure that you mitigate the risk of them leaving, trying to take people, whatever it happens to be. How do you mitigate that risk? There are two ways that you can mitigate that risk. Number one, you can go to Veronica and say, hey, Veronica, I want you to cross-promote your class with, let's say, Hillary or someone else, so that those clients become shared clients. They get used to taking other classes. You could certainly slot in, other instructors, like just force Hillary to take a vacation day or whatever, Veronica, and put other instructors in that you believe have a similar style so that they can do that. The other way that you can do it, quite honestly, is tie these clients, these 14.6% of clients, tie them to each other. Institute in your studios a policy that your instructors tell people, turn to each other and give each other a high five, give them your name, etc., right? Because now they'll have another reason for coming back besides just the instructor. This is the only place where I see Molly and Jen and John. So tie them to other things and have your instructors and your front desk people be a key part of that. Have your front desk people introduce people to each other, have your instructors introduce people to each other, reduce this risk and manage that. Now, obviously, some of you will say, well, isn't part of this due to the time slots that they take? Like more popular time slots will see more people? Yes, but all that comes out in the wash, right? It all just evens itself out. All right. Leveraging your staff to boost client retention. Your staff should focus on 3 types of clients, I believe, on a daily basis, right? And when I say that, I look at front desk people in my studios, they check people in at the beginning of class, and then they're not doing as much as I would love them to be doing, during the rest of that 1 hour, 50-minute time frame or whatever. There's a lot that they could be doing, right? And so right now, there's so many studio owners that are out there feverishly typing out their follow-up messages. It's like a one-man show. Or it's a two-man show. You know, if you've got like a manager that helps you with that, no. Let's get the staff doing this also, right? And they should focus on 3 categories: sales opportunities, at-risk clients, and then what we call feel-good segments. And in FitGrid, the way that we break this down so that there are segments that come up, and I'll show this to you very, very briefly. But sales opportunities are those where you can upsell people into a higher price point. So your intro offer expiration date is approaching. Intro offer classes are almost done. You're actually a new intro offer client. Let's like welcome you to the package, right? A package expiration date is coming. Your classes and your package are almost done. You're a new studio client. ClassPass high frequency, right? High frequency means they've been using ClassPass a lot. Maybe it's actually worth it to them to actually buy into a package or a membership. Wouldn't it be amazing if these people automatically came up for you today and you could just say, oh, I got to reach out to those people, and it could be suggested to you what was actually said, and you could track that whole communication history and see whether or not they came back. At-risk segments, like 15 days not in studio, these are like win-backs, 30 days, etc. Those are at-risk segments. Grab those people before they disappear. And then the feel-good segments are like, hey, you guys are doing really, really great. Or here's a 5-class milestone. Or you're increasing over time, like keep doing what you're doing. If I were to prioritize these from a revenue perspective for the studios out there, I would say sales first, at-risk segments, then feel-good segments. And what we do, don't know, there are other systems out there that might do it, but just to show you an example, what we do is you have like your client outreach segment over here, right? And it automatically will populate like the new studio client and suggested action, all the rest of that. So let me go to something like some of the expired ones, right? So let's say I come here, Ali Roseman, Ali Roseman. So if we clicked on that, she's been visiting the studio for 18 days. This is the information that we have about her. Intro offer expiration date is coming. Clients whose intro offer expiration date is approaching. The goal is to upsell on a membership or a package if appropriate. If not, just reach out and connect. There is a sample message that we suggest as FitGrid that we've suggested that you could send. Intro offer coming to an end. Hey, Ali, how's it been so far? We've loved having you, etc. Would love to keep you coming. Would it be possible to connect and chat about options we have to stay engaged with the studio after the intro period? But you can also look at the client history and see, right? She fell into this category because her intro offer expires the next day, right? We do this in real time, right? On October 24th. So you want to send that message out, and you can actually look at the history and see, you know, which package, what she used. So she did an unpaid Liftonic class, a class pass, then a first week at $59. You can tap into that, see who she actually went to, which pricing option she used, and which instructor she visited. So now you can go back to that message, and you can actually say, I saw that you really loved Veronica. We were actually wondering, Veronica and I were wondering whether or not you might be interested in doing a package or upselling into a different package. Can we connect, right? I don't care whether you use this system or not. I'm just saying you should be doing that. You should be looking at these different segments on a consistent basis, because that is what is going to help you to develop a relationship. And once again, you know, from our perspective, or from the perspective of any business, it shouldn't just be that you're trying to hit someone up when you need money from them or anything like that. You should be hitting them up at the time when you want to make a relationship, before you actually need anything. That's why these feel-good segments become important. Hey, you hit your 5th class, amazing. Have any questions, reach out to us, right? That's before you're selling them on their package being offered and before they become at risk. Finally, evaluating staff performance. To measure how well your staff is doing, you need to know what they did. So how many of their tasks they get done, what did they actually do, and how effective were they at doing those tasks? And theoretically, as an owner, this should be something that should be very simple for you to get up and understand, and just get a report like every single day. If I go back to the FitGrid system here, then you can see really quickly down at the bottom, like what is the stats, you know, in terms of what percentage were done yesterday, what expired, and what were dismissed, right? So you should just understand that and get that and know that. There's actually inside the emails that get sent to you on a summary on a daily basis, it'll actually say for each category that was there, new studio clients, ClassPass high frequency, decreasing frequency clients, what percentage of those messages were actually sent. You know, and so you could have a strategy where you're like, listen, I already know that I like new clients. I don't need a strategy around new clients. I have a process for that. But we better be hitting 100%, you know, of our five-time milestones or our decreasing frequency. If we go at the ones that have been done, then you could actually come and you can actually see who sent it and what they actually sent, to someone. Okay, so that is how you should leverage or how you can evaluate your staff performance. Again, regardless of whether you use FitGrid, we use this as an example to show you. And then finally, just a quote from Coretta Scott King. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members, right? We should just remember that. Fitness is a people business, right? So your people are all members of your community. You have your staff, you have your instructors, you have your clients. They are all mini influencers. When connected, and when you connect them, when you train your staff, your teammates to do this, and when they start to connect people, they become a force. They can drive revenue retention and community bonding, and all those things can be done on your own. This is a small plug, but with FitGrid, it can be done a lot easier. So thank you very much, everyone. Open to questions right now. And the special offer that we want to give to anyone on here is if you sign up today, that instructor risk analysis, right, this chart, so that you can understand which instructors are actually risky to your business and all the rest of that, you will get that for free, right? So we'll just do that for you. We'll provide a link in the chat as well as in a follow-up email so that you can go and if you're interested, come and sign up, and we'll get that information over to you. So please, any questions that anyone has, I want to thank you for your time. This was really, really great. So I think I saw the chat. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so we dropped the link in there. Please, if anyone has a question, please feel free to chime in. I had my birthday yesterday, so if no one asks a question, I'll take that as a great birthday present. Be like, I explained everything incredibly well. You're welcome, Caitlin. And you're welcome, Chesley. Anyone else? Okay, we are at exactly 3 o'clock. I'd like to thank everyone, for your time. And once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to us at info@fitgrid.com, and we're happy to take any questions. Thanks, guys. Oh, how much does FitGrid cost? Okay, there was a quick question on how much FitGrid costs. There are 3 pricing options. Pricing option number 1 is $99 per month. That is for the basic instructor app. It's for the instructor reports that we showed you. If you want the feedback portion, which is where the clients can start to give feedback, then it goes up to $149 per month. And then if you want that client outreach component, then that goes to $249 per month. So $99, $149, $249. If you already use FitGrid, can you still get the instructor risk analysis? Absolutely, Jen. We got you. No problems. Q&A. Any movement on a feature of member-to-member connection? Eric, yes. So because our our engineers would kill me for actually putting an actual date out there, we're looking at January, February timeframe for rolling that out. It's in beta right now, but this is for those who don't know. We'll be rolling out an app that allows the ability for clients to connect with each other so that when one signs up for class, the other can sign up for class. It also has a very interesting client acquisition feature for the studios because it will ask, when someone signs up for class, it'll ask them automatically, hey, would you like to invite friends to this class as well? So that's going to be very cool, I believe, and something that folks will be very interested in, that they can see who else is in there. Again, assuming that they choose to be public. They can also choose to be private. It'll also track their workouts automatically, so they come in, and it automatically says, hey, you did a workout. And halfway through the week, it'll be like, hey, you've done 2 of your 3 workouts. Do you want to book your next one now? Finally, signing up for the instructor analysis includes signing up for a free 30-day trial as well. So you can test out all of these features that we've been talking about with a free 30-day trial. Just jump in and get your instructor analysis, and let's go. Thank you, guys. Really, really appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon.